You've spent your whole life trying to be a good person. You say the right things. You try to make everyone feel seen. You don't speak up when something bothers you because you don't want to be that person. And what has it earned you? Disrespect, exhaustion, a quiet resentment that's starting to turn into self-doubt. You keep trying to do the right thing, but the more good you become, the more invisible you feel. The people who lie, manipulate, posture, they rise. The ones who act ruthless, they get followed. The ones who stay polite, they get passed over. And you're starting to wonder, what if goodness isn't enough? What if goodness is actually a trap? Niccolò Machiavelli saw it centuries ago, and what he said about goodness will make you question everything. You think being good means being kind, being fair, being liked, being noble. But look closely. How often is your goodness just fear wearing a smile? You say yes to things you hate because you're afraid of conflict. You agree with people who are wrong because you don't want to seem rude. You play small because you think humility means disappearing, and you call this virtue. But Machiavelli wouldn't. He'd call it submission. You're not being good, you're being compliant. And the people around you don't see moral nobility. They see someone who won't fight back, someone they can control, someone who confuses being harmless with being good. It's not just about being good, it's about being seen as good. You want people to approve, to admire your integrity, to notice how well you handle yourself, even when they test your patience. But here's the truth. Most people aren't paying attention, and the ones who are, they're not inspired by your passivity. They're enabled by it. They know you won't push back, that you'll stay quiet, that you'll swallow discomfort just to avoid being the bad guy. So they take more, they ask more, they cross lines, and you let them. Because your identity is wrapped in an image, the good one. But being the good one in a corrupt game doesn't make you righteous. It makes you a participant. Machiavelli didn't think goodness was bad. He thought unquestioned goodness was deadly. Machiavelli didn't hate morality. He just didn't trust it. He believed that politics, and by extension life, wasn't governed by ideals. It was governed by power, perception, and strategy. And if you wanted to survive, you had to stop pretending the world rewards virtue. Because it doesn't. It rewards effectiveness. And sometimes that means being feared more than loved. Not because cruelty is good, but because passivity is worse. A prince who can't make hard decisions won't last. A person who can't say no will get drained. A leader who only wants to be liked will become a puppet. You're not here to be a puppet. You're here to wake up, to see clearly, and then to choose consciously. You don't even realize the price you're paying every time you avoid setting a boundary, every time you silence yourself in a meeting, every time you let someone walk over you and call it understanding. You lose power, not just in the world, but within yourself. Because a part of you knows, it watches, it remembers, it whispers, you abandoned me again. That's what guilt is. That's what exhaustion is. That's what the quiet voice of disconnection sounds like. And the more you play the good person, the more distant you become from the real you. Until one day you're so well behaved, you don't even recognize your own desires. You've become nice, but you've stopped being true. You won't be. Not if you're real, not if you're clear, not if you ever, even once, choose self-respect over approval. The people who benefit from your silence will hate your boundaries. The people who used to manipulate your empathy will call you selfish. The people who liked you harmless will call you aggressive. Let them. Let them think what they want. You don't need universal love. You need internal loyalty. And Machiavelli would agree. It is better to be feared than loved. Not because fear is power, but because the need to be loved makes you weak. It makes you predictable, and anyone who can predict you can use you. As a next step of our journey, we'll go deeper into Machiavelli's real message. Not how to become ruthless, but how to stop being ruled by the illusion of virtue. We'll explore why playing fair keeps you stuck, why morality without strength is a performance, and how to walk the narrow path between power and conscience without losing your soul. Ask yourself this: who taught you what good is? Who defined it? Was it someone empowered or someone afraid? Was it someone with boundaries or someone who sacrificed themselves to keep the peace? You were trained to believe that goodness meant self-sacrifice, politeness, softness, compliance. You were praised when you didn't talk back, rewarded when you kept your discomfort to yourself, liked when you avoided rocking the boat. But Machiavelli would say, that's not morality, that's programming. And until you question it, you'll keep playing the game someone else designed, without ever asking if it leads anywhere worth going. The most dangerous person isn't the one who does evil and knows it. It's the one who does harm while thinking they're good, because they never question themselves. They justify manipulation as protection. They call cowardice maturity. They hide their need for control under the mask of compassion. Machiavelli saw this everywhere, people claiming virtue while playing the dirtiest games behind closed doors. They weren't honest, they weren't kind, they weren't strong. They were moral on paper, but dangerous in practice, because unexamined morality is just a more polite form of power. And if you don't wake up to that, you'll keep getting blindsided by people who seem nice, but always leave you feeling off. You believe in fairness. You believe that if you give, you'll receive. If you do the right thing, it'll come back to you. If you work hard, people will notice. But that's not how the real world works. The real world doesn't reward fairness. It rewards leverage. It rewards clarity. It rewards people who understand the rules. And stop pretending those rules are based on merit. Machiavelli didn't say this to depress you. He said it so you'd stop waiting. So you'd stop outsourcing your power to a fantasy about how things should be. Because while you're hoping life is fair, others are making moves, and playing fair becomes your excuse for staying passive. You're not righteous, you're just late. You keep trying to do the right thing, but the right thing means nothing if it doesn't cost you anything. And most of the time, your goodness is safe. You're kind to people who like you. You're generous when you feel in control. You're humble until someone disrespects you. But the second real conflict arises, you fold, you appease, you disappear. That's not morality, that's performance. Machiavelli believed that without strength, morality is just branding, an image, a costume, a story you tell yourself to avoid confrontation, while secretly hoping someone else will protect you. But no one's coming. You're the one you've been waiting for, and the sooner you drop the act, the sooner you can build real power, the kind that makes morality mean something. This is what makes people uncomfortable. Machiavelli said power must come before virtue, not because virtue is worthless, but because without power it's a luxury. If you're starving, ethics won't feed you. If you're under attack, principles won't protect you. If you're powerless, no one cares what you think is right. Build strength first, and then, once you're no longer desperate, no longer easily manipulated, you can choose how you wield that strength. That's real ethics. Not inherited rules, not social scripts, but conscious choices made from a position of clarity. And that's the path Machiavelli respected most. Not cruelty, but strategy. Not manipulation, but wisdom with teeth. Now, what if I told you that trying to be good is killing your soul? Have you ever wondered why bad people seem free? It's time to reclaim your power, not through domination, but through unapologetic self-respect. This is where the real transformation begins. Let's be honest, being good hasn't made you stronger. It hasn't earned you the respect you hoped for. It hasn't made you feel more alive. It's made you cautious, hesitant, heavy. You second-guess your words. You walk on eggshells. You apologize for having needs, for wanting more, for simply existing with standards. You think this makes you virtuous, but Machiavelli would ask, what kind of virtue kills your clarity? What kind of goodness makes you forget who you are? If being good costs you your truth, it's not virtue, it's self-erasure. And the longer you play that role, the more it destroys the very soul you're trying to protect. You watch them, the ones who lie, cheat, manipulate, and somehow look more alive than you. They speak their minds, they take up space, they break rules and walk away smiling. You tell yourself, they're empty, they're narcissists, they'll pay eventually. Maybe. But deep down, another part of you wonders, why do they feel more free than I do? Because they're not waiting to be chosen. They're not waiting to be understood. They're not living to be liked. They act, they decide, they move. And that movement, however reckless, is what you envy, not their cruelty, their freedom. Because while you're stuck calculating what's appropriate, they're living without apology. And that stings, not because they're bad, but because part of you knows you could be free too. You were taught that goodness means obedience, but real goodness isn't passive. It's not quiet. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Real goodness is sharp. It knows when to say no, when to walk away, when to disappoint people to stay loyal to your soul. If your goodness keeps you small, silent, and spineless, it's not goodness. It's fear with a mask on. Machiavelli didn't say to be cruel. He said to be clear. Because a strong person who chooses kindness is powerful, but a weak person who chooses kindness is just trying to survive. Your morals should be a choice, not a cage. And until you choose them from strength, they're just scripts, hand-me-down beliefs you're too scared to rewrite. You think power corrupts. It doesn't. Power reveals. It shows you who you are, unfiltered. And most people can't handle that because they've spent their whole lives pretending they're good. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He didn't believe people were inherently evil. He believed most people are cowards. They avoid truth. They avoid pain. They avoid responsibility. And then they hide behind the illusion of being good. But the world doesn't need more illusions. It needs people who are capable of destruction and choose discipline instead. It needs people who could manipulate and choose transparency. People who could dominate and choose restraint. Not because they're scared, but because they're sovereign. And sovereignty doesn't perform virtue. It embodies it. You were never too much. You were surrounded by people who were too afraid of what you made them feel. Your intensity? It's not a flaw. Your ambition? Not selfish. Your anger? Not dangerous. These are your fire, your signal that you're alive, that you were never meant to blend in, that you weren't built to be agreeable, that you weren't born to follow. And every time you dull that fire for someone else's comfort, you betray something sacred inside you. You betray your will. And Machiavelli believed that will, your ability to act, to choose, to lead yourself, is the only thing that separates a ruler from the ruled. You don't need to dominate the world. You just need to stop submitting to it. Most people don't actually want you to be good. They want you to be predictable, polite, easy to manage. But clarity, that's rare. Clarity says no. Clarity challenges. Clarity interrupts dysfunction. And that makes people uncomfortable. But Machiavelli knew, you don't serve the world by being easy. You serve it by being honest. Because what people really need isn't more comfort. It's someone strong enough to stop the performance. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to be cold. You just have to be clear and stay clear, even when it shakes things up, especially then. You weren't born trying to please. You were taught that it was safer, and for a while it worked. But eventually the cost becomes too high. You say yes when you mean no. You laugh when you want to leave. You soften your voice so no one feels threatened. But every time you do, you abandon a piece of yourself, and piece by piece, you shrink into someone unrecognizable. Machiavelli wouldn't call this virtue. He'd call it self-betrayal, because the highest loyalty isn't to how others see you, it's to the truth you refuse to ignore. You don't need to be nice, you need to be real. When people hear power, they think control, manipulation, dominance. But real power is quieter. It's the ability to direct your life without apology or delay. It's walking away when you know it's time. It's saying no when everyone wants a yes. It's choosing discomfort over self-abandonment. Machiavelli didn't worship tyranny. He respected those who could act deliberately, even under pressure. And that kind of power doesn't scream, it doesn't brag. It just decides. No drama, no justification, just direction. And when you live like that, people stop asking if you're good. They start noticing that you're free. You say you're a good person, but have you ever asked, what does good actually mean to me? Not what your parents said, not what your religion taught, not what society expects. You. What do you stand for? What will you protect? What will you walk away from, no matter the cost? Because if you don't define your values, the world will hand you a script, and you'll follow it, thinking you're moral, when really you're just obedient. Machiavelli believed real virtue required conscious choice. So ask yourself, where did your values come from? And do they still belong to you? Approval is addictive, but it's also a trap. Because the more you seek it, the more you shape yourself around what others want. And little by little, you disappear. Machiavelli never said to be hated, but he warned, don't trade freedom for applause. You don't need to be liked, you need to be conscious. Awake to your own patterns. Awake to the power plays in your life. Awake to the moment your niceness turns into silence. This isn't about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming real. And realness, like power, never begs for permission. This is what no one tells you. Being whole will cost you things. It'll cost you comfort. It'll cost you shallow approval. It'll cost you relationships that only worked because you kept hiding your truth. But what you gain is everything else. Self-respect, alignment, the ability to look in the mirror and say, I'm not perfect, but I'm awake, and I'm not abandoning myself anymore. Machiavelli didn't write for the polite. He wrote for the ones ready to wake up, not to conquer the world, but to stop letting the world conquer them. So if you've been living like goodness means silence, if you've swallowed your voice for the sake of peace, if you've confused obedience with integrity, then here's your challenge. Stop trying to be good. Be whole. Own your fire. Own your power. Own the part of you that's tired of being walked over, looked through, and depended on for your understanding. You weren't made to be safe. You were made to be clear, to know your truth, to act with conviction, to speak with weight, not to please, but to serve something real. Goodness isn't the goal, wholeness is. Because once you become whole, fierce, principled, and unapologetically awake, the question of good becomes irrelevant. You simply are, and that kind of person can't be controlled. If this message stirred something in you, give it a like so it can find someone else who needs it. And if you're walking this path too, subscribe and keep walking with us, because clarity is rare, but we can protect it together. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.